Yes, so we continue from where we left in the previous webinar. Can you all hear me? Is the sound okay? Okay. So we were talking about the various combinations of the doshas, and since Ayurvedic treatment is all about harmonizing and balancing the doshas, the several combinations are really very important. And in this, I was discussing that there are 63 combinations which we will be dealing with in detail in the next webinar, because there are some more basic things to be discussed before we go into the further combinations with doshas. So what we are discussing here is only the major combinations, and just for refreshing our memory, there are three categories: the single dosha dominance, dual dosha dominance, and then the triple dosha dominance. So this is the simplest way of classifying the dosha. So if you look at single dosha dominance, there are three possibilities. Dual dosha, there are again three, and triple dosha, one. So we have 7 basic combinations. So at level 1, we have to get familiar with 7 basic combinations, and we discussed that in the previous webinar. And as we go further, so these are different steps in which we understand the complexity of doshic combinations. So 3 categories plus next step is 7 categories. And then when we add to, as I was discussing in the previous webinar, Pittakapha and Kaphavātapitta are slightly different. So if you look at the dual combinations, again subdivide them into, within the two, one dosha dominating more than the other, then we have again different situations. So for example, Pittakapha is like water being burnt by fire, whereas it's like fire being suppressed by water. So these would lead to different types of clinical manifestations. So in Ayurvedic diagnosis, it's really very important for us to understand, based on the presentation of the disease and the various symptoms that are exhibited by the patient, it's very important for us to understand what is the underlying doshic imbalance. So as we become more and more experts, we go from 7, we have another 3 here, which makes it 10. And then in the Tridoshas, we again have to see all these 9 combinations, like Vātapittakapha, Tridosha with Vata dominance, Tridosha with Pitta dominance, Tridosha with Kapha dominance, Tridosha with Vātapitta dominance, Tridosha with Pittavāta dominance. So that would make it totally 10 plus 9, you would have 19 combinations. So is this part clear? It's just a revision of what we discussed earlier, just to refresh our memories. So this is how it becomes: 3 plus 6 plus 1 plus 9 makes it 19 combinations. So it requires a lot of experience to be able to distinguish between these doshic manifestations, difference between Kaphapitta and Pittakapha. And so I was explaining how Kaphapitta can be differentiated from Pittakapha, and how different treatments will be required. So then we have the Tridosha combinations, And these are very, very difficult to identify, and they cause very strong crisis in the human body. So examples for Tridosha problems are, late stage diseases, conditions like diabetes, cancer, in late stages, certain skin diseases. These are all Tridosha manifestations. And within the Tridosha, we might find there is still further dominance of one or two of the doshas. So in clinical diagnosis, it's very easy to mistake Vata dominance from Vata dominating in Tridosha. Is this point clear? Okay, so what I was mentioning is that Vata dominance is different from Vata dominance in Tridosha. So this is very often mistaken. So in both conditions we might see that Vata is dominating, but in one, the Tridoshas, the other two doshas are also in dominance. So similarly, we may see a Vātapitta condition which may be mistaken with Vātapitta in Tridosha. So that is why we need to distinguish between single, dual and triple combinations of the doshas. So here we have Vātakaphapitta, which means Vata is dominating more, and then Kapha, and then Pitta. So the Tridoshas also we will get in various combinations. So when there is a Tridosha imbalance, we need to see which one is more dominating than the other. So it's quite a clinical task to be even able to distinguish whether all three doshas are involved or not. First step is to see if all the three doshas are involved, and second step is to see which one of them is dominating more than the other. So it could be even a grade, Vata at first, Pitta, Kapha next, and Pitta next, or it could also be Pitta first, Vata next, and then Kapha. So all these possibilities will have to be, and there would be a mixed. Generally, when all the three doshas are involved, you will find mixed manifestation, that there would be signs of all the three doshas. So is that clear? Yes. So this is very, very crucial. So actually we spend a lot of time in actually identifying Tridosha dominance. So the principle is in Tridosha, whenever you see in a patient mixed symptoms of all doshas, we have to actually decide whether it is a dominance of all the three doshas. And once we have seen the dominance of all the three doshas, yes. So you have to set, it's when all the three doshas are above their normal range, then we can decide that this is Tridosha. Yes, so it's possible in VedaPulse also, because one of the major functions of the VedaPulse, I think one of its great utility is going to be in assessing the variations of the doshas. This is not so easy to do clinically. So if the VedaPulse is used, but I think that these ranges need to be also clinically validated little more, and this is an area of interesting study. And we need to fix the algorithms to decide using the VedaPulse how these 63 combinations can actually be kind of discovered. So I hope that can be a future research project. But till that standardization is done, every clinician can still use the VedaPulse to understand which conditions you would characterize it as tridosha, which ones you would say as dual dosha. So that's the first impression. What is that? So what type of dosha tables? Yes. Is it for Prakriti or Vikriti? Because what we are talking about is not dosha constitution. Okay. Yes, so then it will be helpful because what we are discussing here is Vikriti. And once we know what the Vikriti is it dealing with single dosha or dual dosha or triple dosha, then this is a big step in actual diagnosis. So I'm going to just show very briefly the various combinations possible. So we have here again Pitta Kaphavāta, and then we have Kapha Pittavāta, and then we have, yeah, that's the same thing, Kaphavātapitta. So these are the various combinations of tridoshas that you can see. So I want to give some examples. You know, there are some, usually the tridoshic imbalance is life-threatening, or it produces chronic problems. So tridoshic combinations cause either chronic problems or life-threatening situations. So I want to talk about some of the common fevers that we see today. You know, swine flu. So I want you to just give a feedback. What kind of dosha do you think is there in swine flu? So in the next few minutes, I want to discuss. We'll do some simple interactions to see whether, you know, these you're able to identify the doshic dominance in the diseases that I'm mentioning. So the first thing is swine flu. Now, what do you say? This is a single, dual, or triple dosha presentation? Why? You have to look at the symptoms of swine flu. Which system is affected more? No, you see upper respiratory system. It's very similar to the influenza. The lungs is affected. So, you know, you will usually see a Vātakapha symptom. So I want you to tell me now whether it is Vātakapha or Kaphavāta. So you can see that it's actually running nose, lot of secretions, and if you remember our discussion on the doshi combinations, you can understand that this running nose and secretions are seen in Vātakapha condition. So it is very clear that swine flu is Vātakapha. But now the simple question is it only Vātakapha or is it Tridosha Vātakapha? Okay? Can you think about it? Yes, exactly. So the fact that it is Tridosha Vātakapha is what makes it really challenging to treat. So now let's look at bronchial asthma. What doshas are involved in bronchial asthma? Is it Tridosha or is it dual dosha? Can you tell which doshas are involved? Hello, can you hear me? Yes, which ones? So in bronchial asthma, actually in the early stages, bronchial asthma is Vātakapha. In the first stage it is Kaphavāta. In the next stage it is Vātakapha. So this is the difference. While bronchial asthma is Kaphavāta, swine flu is Tridosha Vātakapha. So this is the difference. This is how we have to actually distinguish between the doshic dominance in different diseases. Is this point clear? We can look at one more example before we move forward. But I want to know whether this concept is clear. So let us now look at dengue fever. Can you tell me, is it single, dual, or triple? Have you heard of dengue fever? Okay, so dengue fever, I will just give you a brief description. It is caused by the dengue mosquito. It's a So dengue fever includes severe headache, pain. So I'm just sending the symptoms. And the most important thing is, at a later stage in dengue fever, you get bleeding. The platelet count goes down. So looking at the symptoms, what would you say it is triple, dual, or single dosha? Yes, and which dosha is dominating? Yes, so that is the way. I just wanted to, because this is the most, this section that we are discussing can be a little bit confusing unless, we discuss it with a few examples, especially through dosha. So I feel now you're beginning to understand the concept. So there are many diseases like this. Every disease that you are aware of, you can try to do a dosha analysis based on the symptoms. And then gradually we will develop the skill. Just when we see the person or the disease, we are able to identify the doshic combination. So in this way, we need to clinically be able to distinguish between single, dual, and triple dosha combinations. So that brings us, so these are just the symbols which I have used, Vata, Pitta and Kapha, to see all their various combinations, and understanding the doshic combinations is such an important aspect of Ayurvedic clinical diagnosis. So with this we are coming to conclude for the time being the discussion on doshas. We will again look at the 63 combinations with some examples of actual diseases in a table, but that would be only in the next webinar. But now for the time being, this is good enough as an introduction to the doshas. So is everything clear now, and can we now then move on to the dhatus? Okay, so now we start with the next topic, dhatus. So okay, thank you. So now we are going to dhatus. As we said in Ayurveda, the body is said to be a combination of dosha, dhatu and mala. So we have discussed the doshas. Dhatu actually means support, that which supports. So we usually translate the dhatus as tissues, but that's not a very correct way of translating. Dhatu represents 7 stages through which your food gets transformed, and it's a process in which the waste materials are gradually removed until we reach a stage when no more waste is there to remove. So this is the concept of a dhatu. So we cannot say that they are strictly tissues in modern terms, but they may correspond to specific tissues. So the 7 dhatus, which are 7 stages in digestion and assimilation, as nutrient fluid, blood, muscle, fat, bone, marrow, and reproductive elements. So is this clear? There are Sanskrit terms for all of these dhatus, which I did not mention in the slides, but just for our understanding, the first dhatu is called as rasa. So what is rasa? Like when your food is digested, the essence of the food is absorbed. This is the first level of transforming the food, the first level of waste removal, and the essence that comes out of the food. This is strictly speaking rasa. There is actually no English equivalent for rasa. In Ayurveda, rasa is considered to be separate from rakta or blood. So I will come to this point later. Blood is different from rasa, although rasa and blood may be mixed together. The term for blood is rakta, but rasa is the essence of the digested food. So it's a good translation for rasa is the nutrient fluid or the nutrient essence of digestion. And that rasa is then transformed into what we call as rakta or blood. And then in the next stage of digestion, the muscle is formed. This is the flesh of the whole human body, and this is called as mamsa. And then in the next stage of digestion, we adipose fat in the body. So this is called as medas. So the next one is mamsa. And then we have medas. Then medas is fat, and then asthi, which is actually bone, and majja, which is bone marrow, and then shukra, which is the reproductive element. So these are the 7 Dhātus. The food that we eat is transformed into these 7 stages. And at the 8th stage of digestion, it is said that ojas is produced, which is the source of all physical energy. So I want to point out here that in Ayurveda, we consider that the fate of food, that food has to be continuously transformed to the highest stage of refinement. That is what the 7 Dhātus are all about. So you can even say that there are 7 steps in digestion, 7 steps in the production of what we would call as ojas. So unless all the Dhātus are completely formed, the body will not have the sufficient immunity or even the sufficient strength to perform in a normal activity, and also immunity from disease. So these are the ways in which the Dhātus actually support. How do the Dhātus become support? Because they provide the structure as well as the energy for the body. So because they support the body by being structure and by energy, they are called as supports. So the translation for Dhātu is support. So is this point clear? This is just an introduction, so we will go into more. So here is a diagram which talks about the Dhātu cycle. So you can see rasa, rakta, mamsa, medas, asthi, majja, and shukra. Have all of you heard about these 7 Dhātus? Okay. So here, some of the Dhātus that are a bit confusing. One is Rasa Dhātu, because you cannot see correlation. Then we have some confusions regarding also Majja. So some of the Dhātus that are a bit confusing are Rasa, and then Majja, and then Shukra. So as I said, Rasa Dhātu is actually the essence of your digested food, and so it's very difficult to find an equivalent. You can say that Rasa is a combination of chyle, lymph, and such other fluids in the body. And then when it comes to Majja, we usually correlate Majja as marrow, But Majja also represents the fat that is filled inside the bones, which means even the brain and spinal cord we must consider as specializations of Majja in Ayurveda. So this is very important because, when treating certain diseases, when we want to nourish the Majja Dhātu, then we use marrow, or sometimes we also use the brain and spinal cord of various animals. So this is a bit sometimes confusing, that if you just reduce the marrow to just bone marrow, then it doesn't really fulfill the Ayurvedic understanding of Majja, which also extends and includes the nervous system. So in Ayurveda we would say there are three types of Majja. One is the yellow, then the red, and then the brain and spinal cord. So all these are Majja Dhātu. Then the most confusing of the Dhātus is the Shukra Dhātu. So the first question that comes is, whether females also has Shukra Dhātu. This is because we normally translate Shukra Dhātu as the male reproductive element. So that is why the question arises as to whether the females also have Shukra Dhātu. So the idea here is that both males and females have Shukra Dhātu. Shukra Dhātu is the power of reproduction, and in females it functions for renewal of the body. So Shukra Dhātu is actually representing the principle of renewal. It's not just the external reproductive element. It's the power of renewal of the whole body. So in both men and women we have Shukra Dhātu in a subtle form, without which the body will not be able to renew and repair itself. Whereas in the males it is also the physical substratum of reproduction, whereas in the women it is the Rakta or Rakta Dhātu, out of which the menstrual fluid comes out. That is considered as the reproductive element. So there's a difference. While in the males the Shukra Dhātu itself is the reproductive component, in the females it is the Rakta Dhātu which functions or participates in the process of reproduction, although both males and females do have Shukra Dhātu. So is this point clear? So what I want to tell here is that if you look at even a single cell, it has got all three doshas, all 7 dhatus, and 3 Malās. So that is why I was trying to point out that we cannot correlate the dhatus with specific tissues, because if you look at every cell, it has got its own rasa, it has got its own rakta, it's got its own mamsa, medas, asthi, and majja and shukra. So this concept of tridosha and tridhatu is at the cellular level. It's not at just the macroscopic level. So if every cell is actually having all the 7 dhatus, you can understand that Shukra Dhātu is that element in the cell which enables cellular reproduction, which enables the division of the cells and its own renewal. So dhatu has to be understood at this level. So the final product of this digestion and metabolism is the ojas. So you can just imagine this is how it happens. You take some food and you cook it, you remove the waste, and from what remains, the essence that remains, we again cook it and we remove waste. And then again we cook it and remove the waste, take the essence. This goes on and on until you reach a point where there is no more waste to be removed. And this is the stage of ojas. So in the last phase of the dhatu paka, ojas is produced. Is this clear? So now we will look at each of the dhatus one by one. And as I said, the first one is Rasa Dhātu, which is the essence of the digested food. And this can be loosely compared with the plasma part of the blood. So it is the Rasa Dhātu which is continuously providing nourishment to all other parts of the human body. So it is actually the lifeline of the body. And the function of Rasa Dhātu is basically nourishment. So the entire body, all the parts of the human body requires continuous nourishment in order to be able to renew its structures and to release energy. So without the Rasa Dhātu, none of the parts of the body would be able to receive the necessary nutrition to keep itself going. And from a doshic point of view, Rasa Dhātu is actually the seat of Kapha. So this is the Dhātu which has the most striking resemblance to Kapha. So usually if there are diseases in which Kapha is involved, you can also see the involvement of the Rasa Dhātu. So both go hand in hand. So things which aggravate Rasa Dhātu can also disturb Kapha, and those which aggravate Kapha can also influence and affect the Rasa Dhātu. So amongst all the Dhātus, only Rasa Dhātu is able to spread everywhere in the body, while as Rakta Dhātu or blood does not actually come out of the capillaries, because if blood comes out of the capillary into the outside environment, then we have to consider that as bleeding. So only the Rasa Dhātu comes out, it forms both the intracellular and extracellular fluid. Plus it also represents the plasma component of blood. So this is a brief description of Rasa Dhātu. Is this point clear? Next we come to Rakta Dhātu. So liver, intestine and marrow converts Rasa Dhātu into Rakta Dhātu. So the Rakta Dhātu can be considered as the equivalent of what we understand today as blood. So the Rasa Dhātu produces nourishment, but without the Rakta Dhātu, the body cannot access the energy from the food that we eat. So Rakta Dhātu enables in the transformation of Rasa Dhātu, without which the body wouldn't be able to burn the necessary substances to produce and release energy. So that's the difference between Rasa Dhātu and Rakta Dhātu. Rasa Dhātu is nourishing, whereas Rakta Dhātu is transforming. So we know today without oxygen the cells and tissues will die, and the function of Rakta is to ensure that all cells obtain the necessary oxygen to be able to perform their functions. Now when Rasa Dhātu is the seat of Kapha, that Rakta Dhātu is actually the seat of Pitta. So this is the difference. Is this clear? So the seat of Rakta Dhātu is liver and intestine, and it is also the seat of Pitta. So the next Dhātu is Mamsa Dhātu. So broadly, hello, can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me? There seemed to have been an interruption. Hello? Okay. Yes, so next we come to the third Dhātu, which is the Mamsa Dhātu. And this is generally translated as the flesh in the human body, the musculature. And this is also the seat of Kapha. And the function of the musculature is to help the body to contract and relax and to perform functions apart from serving as a wall to enclose the soft organs of the human body. So that this is very similar to the function of muscles, and these help the body to move things, to contract, and it's also the seat of Kapha. So this is Rasa, Rakta and Mamsa, or the nutrient fluid, blood, and then the muscle. Then we have the Medas Dhātu, and Medas is the fat, the adipose tissue of the body. Its function is actually to lubricate and to protect the body from cold, and it also serves as a source of energy. So it is closely associated with Kapha. An increase in Kapha invariably leads to the increase of Medas. So this is very important to understand, that compared to Mamsa and Rasa, which are also seats of Kapha, in pathological conditions, actually increase of Kapha is attended by increase actually also of Medas. So diseases in which Kapha can increase can also lead to increase in Medas, and an example is diabetes. And the increase in Medas is actually very difficult to also manage. We will come to explaining the reason. So while the function of Medo Dhātu or Medas is to lubricate and protect the body from cold, Medas also serves as a source of energy. So when there is less activity, then the human body tends to actually build up more of Medas. So this is the next Dhātu, and then we have Asthi Dhātu, which is actually the bone or the skeletal framework of the human body, and Asthi Dhātu is the seat of Vata. So the Asthi Dhātu helps in all locomotion, helps in giving a framework and support to the human body. And what's interesting in Ayurveda is that it is considered as a seat of Vata. Although structurally it is the strongest of all the Dhātus in the human body. So we have Rasa is Kapha, Rekta is Pitta, Mamsa is Kapha, Medas is Kapha, and Asti is Vata, and then Majja is again Kapha, with a little bit of Pitta, and then Shukra is again Kapha. So we can see that there is actually more Kapha in the Dhātus, which is perfectly understandable because the Dhātus are actually physical structures, and that is why there is more dominance of Kapha in the Dhātus. So next we come to Majja Dhātu. So Majja is generally translated as a bone marrow, but as I was pointing out, bone marrow, translating Majja as bone marrow, is a very simplistic translation. It is actually seen inside the bone, so we can say that fat is a kind of fat which is seen inside the bones, and that is Majja. And the brain and spinal cord, as I was mentioning earlier, are also considered to be a specialization of Majja Dhātu, and it's the seat of Kapha. And then finally we have Shukra Dhātu. So the Shukra Dhātu is the reproductive element. So it's important, again, as I pointed out, to understand that the Shukra Dhātu is actually present in both the male and the female, but it plays the reproductive function only in the males. Now Shukra Dhātu is also the seat of Kapha. So this is a brief introduction to the Dhātus. We will come back to the Dhātus again, because just like doshas, we need to understand the pathology of the Dhātus, and this can be a bit tricky and confusing because is this point clear? So we have discussed very briefly about dosha and Dhātus. Now what I want to tell you is that in your diagnosis, you already did the dosha combinations. Now to this dosha combination, you have to add the Dhātus. So if you combine for each Dhātu, there are the pathological possibilities are, if you look at the three simple combinations, single dosha in Rasa Dhātu is one possibility. So we have three doshas in one Rasa Dhātu, so we have 3 plus 1, 4 combinations. And then we have dual dosha in Rasa Dhātu. So the dual dosha in Rasa Dhātu is when Rasa Dhātu is afflicted by a dominance of 2 doshas, and we also have 3 doshas in Rasa Dhātu. So considering the fact that each Dhātu, when the doshas get deranged and get established in each of the Dhātus, the symptoms or manifestation will be extremely kind of varied. So similarly, we have Vata in Rakta Dhātu, which is different from Kapha in Rakta Dhātu or Pitta in Rakta Dhātu. We have Vātapitta in Rakta Dhātu, Vātakapha in Rakta Dhātu, and also Kaphavātapitta in Rakta Dhātu. In fact, all the 19 combinations that we talked about can be described in terms of their mathematical possibilities of combining the two. So in the night especially, so 19 combinations in one dhatu. So we have actually 19 into 7 combinations. Is this clear? So when you want to have a basic understanding of pathology, you have to study minimum 133 combinations of doshas and dhatus. So this is one of the challenging parts of learning diagnosis in Ayurveda. So we must know, we earlier studied that Vata and Vātapitta are different, Vata and Pitta and Vata are different. And now we need to know actually not only the doshic imbalance by themselves, but what happens when the dosha get affected or involved with a particular dhatu. So this is how 133 combinations are created, and depending on specific combinations of doshas and dhatus, we have to have a very specific line of treatment. So that's the importance of knowing the doshas and dhatus. And now we come to the Malās, or the waste products of the human body. So basically there are 3 major Malās, or wastes: the fecus, the urine, and the sweat. Hello. So as I was mentioning, there are 3 major Malās, which are the fecus, the urine, and the sweat. So they represent actually the solid, the liquid, and the micro wastes that are removed from the body through digestion and 2 different stages of metabolism. So apart from these 3 major wastes, there are additional wastes of the human body, and these specific wastes are 7 dhatus are the kapha that comes out of the activities of the Rasa Dhātus. These are the mucus secretions. So in the body we produce a lot of mucus secretions, and these are considered to be expressions of kapha, and these come from the Rasa Dhātu. So in such diseases we have to deal with the Rasa Dhātu as well as kapha. So pitta that comes out of the breakdown of Rakta Dhātu is considered to be also a waste. Now what is interesting here I want to talk about is that the waste that we produce in the human body, we divide into 2 categories. The ones that are removed and the ones that are actually and the ones that are recycled. So what I want to point out here is that all the waste that we produce in the human body, all of them are not actually removed. A lot of them are actually, it means the body uses it for some purpose. So this is a great economics of the human body, that it also makes use of a lot of waste that is produced. In fact, the body transformations, the transformations of the dhatus that happen in the human body, are so complex and so profound that a large quantity of waste is produced. And if we were to remove all this waste from the body, then we would be excreting for quite a lot of our times. So this is a great organization of the body, that a lot of the waste that we produce is actually recycled and used for purposes, secondary purposes. So what I'm talking about here as the additional waste of the body, these are the waste that are not removed from the body but which are used again for secondary purposes. Yes, that's a good question. It is the waste of Vata. So all the gaseous secretions that come even in our stomach and that comes out of our lungs, all these things are considered as wastes of Vata. They have been, because they are not visible and they are not physical, they are not discussed here under the category of wastes. But when there's a discussion of Vata, they are discussed separately. So the flatus, the abdominal accumulation of various gases, and the exhaled air, these are all the invisible wastes of the body, which are wastes of Vata. Is that clear? It's a good question. So we have actually invisible and visible wastes in the human body, excreted and recycled waste. So this is very interesting to know, that all waste is not excreted, all waste is not recycled, all wastes are not visible. There are some wastes which are invisible. So that's a good question. So I think this gives a clear picture of how Ayurveda understands wastes. So a lot of the secretions that come out of the human body, the secretions in our nostrils, the secretions in our respiratory passages, that is the secretions in various passages and channels of the human body, these are all considered as mala or waste of the Rasa Dhātu. So is this point clear? So the kapha that is recycled So is this point clear? So we will come later to study the types of kapha, and it is very interesting to note, this is why many of the doshas are considered to be developed out of waste byproducts. So the pleural fluid, the peritoneal fluid, all these kind of fluids which support various organs, these are all considered to be developed, or they are recycled versions of the Rasa Dhātu. So this is Pitta, Kapha, and then we have Rakta Dhātu or bile. So Ayurveda says that this Pitta, which comes as a waste, is actually produced out of Rakta Dhātu or blood. So even today we know that hemoglobin, which gives blood its red color, is produced as a breakdown of, bile is produced as a breakdown of hemoglobin. So bile we can compare with Pitta, and hemoglobin with Rakta. So when Rakta is broken down, then bile or Pitta is produced. So Ayurveda was one of the first medical systems in the world to describe the production of hemoglobin, the production of bile from the breakdown of hemoglobin. So this is described that Pitta comes out of the breakdown of Rasa Dhātu. And so we know that this bile is again used for digestive purposes, so it's actually recycled waste. And that's the most interesting thing. A lot of waste that is recycled in the human body, in the processes of digestion and metabolism, actually play very important roles in the structural and functional stability of the human body. So is this clear? These are the two major additional wastes of the human body, the Kapha and the Pitta. So is this point clear? Okay. So next we have Mamsa Dhātu, and a lot of waste is produced from the Mamsa Dhātu, and these wastes are actually filling up the channels and cavities of the human body. So you can see that there is waste in the ears, the ear wax, and secretions in the various other cavities of the human body. These are all considered to be derived from the Mamsa Dhātu, and these also help indirectly to lubricate and to keep the surfaces of these passages clean, and also sometimes prevent bacterial infections. So these are all part of the specialized secretions. So if you look at Medas Dhātu, there is actually a very specialized waste that comes out of Medas Dhātu, and this is the sweat. So the sweat is also considered to be a separate waste. It's one of the three major wastes of the human body, and it's also it's specifically coming from Medas Dhātu. So when there is more Medas is affected, people who have more fat, people who are obese, they tend to sweat more because their Medas Dhātu is affected. Now we also know that sweat means a lot of excretion. It's excreted, but it also plays some role in preserving the softness of the skin. So we cannot say amongst these ways sweat is not really recycled by the body, although it may play a very small role. But sweat also, I hope you understand what is the most important function of sweat. So sweat, although it is not recycled, it plays a very important role apart from removal of wastes. Yes, so can you tell what is the function of sweat? Important function of sweat. So as I was mentioning, what I was trying to point out here, yes, exactly. So the most important function of sweat is thermoregulation. So although the sweat is not recycled in the human body, the production and excretion of sweat is done in such a way that even as we remove waste from the body, the thermoregulation is achieved. So this is very interesting how Ayurveda had recognized the supportive roles of Malās. So it's a fundamental concept in Ayurveda that all waste does not have to be removed. All waste do not have to be removed. In fact, removing waste more than a limit is actually harmful for the body. So this is what I meant. In Ayurveda, we actually do not believe that the body can be cleansed and made pure. One of the reasons why we say Malās also play a role is, I mentioned earlier, that our body is host to microbiota, the flora of microbes. So there is a reason why some of the wastes are also still kept inside the body, because it helps to support and maintain the internal environment of the body. So this is a brief description of the various types of waste: the invisible waste, the visible waste, the excreted wastes, and the recycled wastes, and then the physiological functions of the waste. So we say the body is supported by doshas, Dhātus, as well as Malās. So all the three actually support the body: doshas, Dhātus, and Malās. So sweat from Medas Dhātu and nails from Asti Dhātu. This is interesting that hair and nails are considered actually as waste products. They are said to be produced out of waste products in the human body, and they are said to be impure, and they are actually wastes which are recycled. And then we have from Shukra Dhātu, Ojas. Ojas is actually not a waste, but it's a byproduct. So this is a very interesting perception, that Ayurveda says that the waste or byproduct reflects our perception. Depending on its utility, we can only when a substance needs to be removed from the body completely, you can call it as a waste. So when you can use it for some other purpose. Instead of calling it as a waste, you can say that they are an additional byproduct. So the transformations that happen in the human body are such that a lot of byproducts are produced which may not have been initially necessary, or it has not been produced with an intention. When something else is being produced, many byproducts are obtained, and the wisdom of the human body is such that it has learned how to make use of these byproducts, and instead of considering them as waste, the body has been able to use it for other secondary purposes. So this is the description of the Malās. And now I want to go into some concepts of theories of nutrition. As I was mentioning, in Ayurveda, we say that digested food is transformed into 7 Dhātus and Ojas. So there are many theories about how this nutrition actually happens. One theory states that one dhatu is transformed into another, just like milk is turned into curds, butter, and ghee. Which means when digestion happens, the food that we eat gets completely transformed and absorbed as Rasa Dhātu. The gross waste is removed as Malās. And from Rasa Dhātu as it gets cooked, gets completely transformed to Rakta Dhātu. And Rakta Dhātu, when it gets cooked, gets completely transformed to Mamsa Dhātu. So this is one theory of how the different Dhātus are formed in the human body. So this theory states, just like the same milk gets transformed into curds, butter and ghee, in a similar way, the Rasa Dhātu gets transformed into Rakta, Mamsa, and so on and so forth. But a lot of people do not accept this theory because they say that if the Dhātus are continuously getting transformed, completely getting transformed, then if we fast for a few days, we would not have any Rasa Dhātu in our body. So there are other theories which say that actually it is Rasa Dhātu which nourishes all the other Dhātus of the body, just like paddy fields are irrigated, which means the Rasa Dhātu flows to all parts of the human body and provides nourishment to each and every part according to their requirement. Just like paddy fields are irrigated, we are giving water supply. So these are all theories of nutrition and circulation. So the theory of complete transformation, the theory of irrigation, and the third theory states that the Dhātus pick up necessary nutrition from the Rasa Dhātu according to their requirements. So if you look at it very closely, and I want to tell that these three theories are really important because they have clinical applications. The theory that one Dhātu can be completely transformed to the other is very similar to the concept of stem cells, cutting edge of research and new therapies in modern medicine. So Ayurveda says that it is possible to transform one Dhātu into the other. Although in normal circumstances this may not happen, but in very special circumstances. So this theory is at the root of the Ayurvedic idea of Rasayana, or Rasayana treatment, which means the possibility of even regeneration of lost tissue. So this is the theory that since one Dhātu can be transformed into the other, in principle, if the right conditions are made, then lost tissue can be regenerated by the use of rasayanas. One Dhātu is transformed to another, just like milk is turned into curds. So this is the application, stem cell kind of application concepts. And in Ayurveda we say through the use of rasayanas, careful use of rasayanas, we can transform one Dhātu into the other, and this holds a lot of promise for regenerating lost tissue, organ damage. For example, in our clinic in India, we do this kind of regeneration of lost tissue through rasayana by use of for liver regeneration. So we have a lot of experience in doing this. Have you heard of long pepper? So it is a plant called Piper longum. It's a spice. So you can check for long pepper on the net or get more information. So it is well known that if we use long pepper as a rasayana, means you have to give this medicine in increased doses. Day by day, keep increasing the dose of long pepper and then taper it down. So this is called as Vātapittakapha rasayana. It's a special method of rasayana. This is excellent in regenerating damaged liver. So this is based on the first theory of transformation of the dhatu, one dhatu being transformed into the other. So if we take the necessary efforts, Ayurveda says that in sufficiently early stages, we can repair a lot of damaged organs. And this is because of the theory of transformation of the dhatus. The second theory, actually in modern medicine and modern physiology, there are two theories. I don't know if you have heard, passive transport and active transport. So substances are carried in the human body and distributed to different organs through the cellular membranes through two processes. These are called as the active and passive transport. So passive transport is, because of osmotic gradient, substances move across the cellular membranes. This is very similar to paddy field irrigation. So this is called as the paddy field irrigation theory. So which means if we can change the osmotic gradient of the internal fluids, then we can change the composition of the internal intra and extracellular fluids. So this principle is used in the management of certain swellings, edema, where you want the transport between intra and extracellular fluids to be completely changed and controlled. So this is the second theory of paddy field irrigation. And the third is the theory of active transport. And active transport means that for the substances to be transported from one part of the body to the other, you need to use some energy pump. These things need to be pumped. It will not go automatically, but you need to use some energy to push the substances across. So these are two types of transports. So it's very interesting to see that Ayurveda has talked about all these three types of transformations and nutritional exchanges, the possibility of stem cell regeneration, the possibility of passive transport, as well as the possibility of active transport. So we are back after the break and we shall continue. So we were talking about the theories of nutrition and how different dhatus are formed and nourished. And there were three major theories. The theory of complete transformation, the theory of passive transport. So we can say that the paddy field irrigation is transport without need of energy expenditure, whereas active transport requires energy expenditure. So this is the basic difference, and active transport is with energy. So this is the basic difference between the active and passive transport. So I hope you got an idea about how these theories are also clinically applied. So is this part clear? So we discussed about doshas, we discussed about dhatus, we discussed about malās, and then we discussed about how the dhatus are transformed, created, and nourished, and how there are theories about nutrition. So I want to point out at this time that in Ayurveda, a lot of insights into the physiological functions of the human body are described, and some of them predate the discoveries in modern medicine. So it's really important to understand about these developments of Ayurveda. There are sophisticated theories behind many of the clinical applications in Ayurveda. The theories of nutrition is one such example. So next we come to the theory of circulation. And this is again an interesting area that requires some description and discussion. So we all know that we credit William Harvey for having discovered circulation. And according to Ayurveda, Rasa Dhātu circulates in the body. So Ayurveda says that actually it is Rasa which circulates and Rakta moves along with it. So if you look at it, it's interesting, and it makes more sense to look at from the Ayurvedic viewpoint, because in Ayurveda we see that only the Rasa Dhātu actually reaches out of the body. Only the Rasa Dhātu can come out of the blood vessels, out of the capillaries. The heart pumps the Rasa Dhātu all over the body without a break. And Rakta actually, or the blood, doesn't actually come out of the capillaries. So we say that is Rasa which is actually circulating, and along with it Rakta also moves. And there was a very ancient textbook called the Bhela Samhita, which actually describes the process of circulation. So it says that the food that we eat, it gets digested and it gets absorbed from the stomach, it reaches the heart, and from the heart it is pumped and distributed to the entire human body. So because Rasa comes into the heart and it moves also out of the heart through the vessels which originate from the heart, and so heart is said to be the seat of Rasa Dhātu. And that's interesting again, that heart is the seat of Rasa, not Rakta. And actually the seat of blood is said to be liver and spleen. So it was well understood that blood, the production of blood and its renewal happens through the spleen, and in younger stages through the liver. And so Rakta has been associated with liver and spleen, whereas Rasa is associated with the heart. So in Ayurveda also are described different types of vessels which seem to correspond to the modern concepts of artery, vein, and capillary. So in Ayurveda we have the term called dhamani, which means that which pulsates. And I'm sure that you can already make a guess that dhamani actually represents the artery. So is this point clear? And we say Sira is that in which blood flows passively, in which Rasa flows passively. And you can already imagine that looking at the definition, Sira would be a vein. And we say that Srotas is that from which Rasa oozes out. So this, as we can imagine, is capillary. So you can see that in Ayurveda, circulation has been described and even the structure. So we have the heart, the dhamani, the sira, and the srotas, and the circulation of Rasa Dhātu. So is this point clear? So this is the theory of circulation. And the specific type of vata which actually pumps the rasa through the heart, it is called as Vyana Vata. So we will be discussing today a little bit more about Vyana Vata. So Vyana Vata is the Vata, the type of Vata that is located in the heart region and which makes the heart to pump continuously. And with each pumping, the Rasa Dhātu is ejected out and distributed to the entire body. So we see that we had a theory of nutrition, we have a theory of circulation in Ayurveda, and the description of the circulation actually predates by many centuries the discovery of blood circulation in modern medicine. So next we will look at certain other descriptions of physiological functions. And we have a very detailed description also of the theory of respiration in the Ayurvedic texts. So this is described only in one textbook called the Sharna Dhara Samhita. So somebody asked me what happens to CO2. As I was mentioning, it's an invisible mala or waste of water which comes out of the lungs. And in the theory of description, it is mentioned that prana. So if Vyana is involved in circulation, we say that prana is involved in respiration. So today we will discuss about the 5 different types of Vata, 5 different types of Pitta a little later. And each of these types of Vata play a particular role in our physiological functions. And in respiration, it is actually prana. So the prana from the umbilical region moves upward by passing through the heart. It comes out of the throat to the external atmosphere. And it is said that after drinking the nectar of the atmosphere, it comes back to activate the digestive fire and sustain the activities of the entire body. So here is a very interesting description that there is the breath which actually moves upward, it touches the heart, and then it comes out through the lungs, out of the throat to the external atmosphere. And it is said that there is a nectar in the atmosphere which this prana drinks, and then it comes inside and it activates the digestive fire and enables all the functions of the tissues to take place. And thereby it sustains the activities of the entire human body. So this is the theory of respiration. So do you have any questions at this point? So here you can see that many things are described in Ayurveda, the role of abdomen in respiration. And that, the pure blood and impure blood, how the role of the heart in exchange of carbon dioxide and oxygen. So the atmospheric nectar, it almost sounds like oxygen. that the prana vata actually comes out of the human body. It reaches out into the external environment and drinks the atmospheric nectar. And then it goes. So I've actually given a very simplified version of the theory of respiration. And this could actually be elaborated in much greater detail, explaining very many steps. But that is really outside the scope of this webinar, so I'm not venturing into that. So I hope these points are clear. Is there any clarification required? So Vyana Vata is included in circulation, is responsible for circulation, and Prana Vata is responsible for respiration. So this is the difference. So if there are no questions, then we will continue to move forward. And then we come to the theory of digestion. The food is digested in different phases. So first there is the digestion in the mouth, then in the stomach, and then in the intestines. And Pitta in the form of Agni digests food. This is called Jatara Agni, or digestive fire of the stomach. And food is also digested by its own combustion. This is called as Bhuta Agni. And digestion and metabolism of Dhātus then is done by Dhātu Agni. So this is a very important thing to distinguish. Have you heard of the three types of Agnis? I would like to know this because depending on that, I will need to decide how much detail I must go into this topic. The three types of Agnis. How many of you have heard of this? Hello, I'd just like to know how many of you have heard about the three types of Agnis. Okay. So, since some of you have not heard about it, so I think I must give a little bit of explanation. There are three types of Agnis called Jatara Agni, which is the first type, which is this Agni in the stomach. So this is the Agni which activates all digestion. So we say that this is just, you can consider as the external fire. Like if we want to burn something, if you want to burn a paper, you must first, use a matchbox and first give the fire from outside. And once the paper catches fire, then it can burn on its own. So Jadaragni is that fire in the human body, in the stomach, which activates or initiates all the digestion. Without Jadaragni, the body would not be able to transform the food that we eat. So it's the first phase of process. So it's the external fire. Jadhara means the abdomen. So this is the abdominal fire. If you want an exact translation of Jadaragni, it would be called as abdominal fire. So it's the external fire. So I hope this point is clear. Because I would like you to listen to this very, very carefully. That, if you want to burn a piece of paper, the fire, according to Ayurveda, is already there in all objects in the universe. Every universe is burning. It has got fire inside. I hope you understand this concept, because this is a little bit to be understood carefully. That fire, yes, there is fire already in all the objects. Every object in the universe is burning. So actually the object survives by preventing the internal fire to burn out the whole substance. So that is the secret of longevity. The secret of longevity is to suppress or prevent the internal fire from burning away the entire object. So the fire is actually held inside, it is actually controlled by an envelope of the other bhutas. So when we put fire from outside, when fire is applied from outside, this insulation is lost. The insulation from the internal fire is lost. So when that is lost, the object begins to burn on its own. So that's what happens when we actually burn a piece of paper. So in the first stage, we are actually using fire from outside, and that outside fire removes the external insulation of that paper, and soon the fire from inside the paper begins to manifest. So when the fire inside the paper manifests, you can throw away the matchbox. Now it doesn't need external fire. That substance will burn on its own. So even our human body, the Dhātus of the human body, has its own fire, and the body is continuously being burned. And it is renewed because whatever is burnt we are replacing with food every day, otherwise the body wouldn't last. After a few days of fasting, the body would have collapsed. So Jadaragni is that external fire in your stomach which activates the burning of the food that you actually consume. So are you able to understand this point? So the next Bhuta Agni. So Bhuta Agni is the fire inside the objects. So when the fire is too low, so I will come to that. So when the external fire is too low, you will understand this once I also describe another type of Agni which is called as Dhātu Agni. So after we understand Dhātu Agni, you will be able to understand what happens when the fire is too low in our body. So you know, when fire is too low in our body, there is no transformations happening. The body goes into a frozen state, just like a stone. In a stone, actually fire is too low. So the stone remains the same for a long period of time. But the problem is you cannot express consciousness. For consciousness to be expressed, there has to be transformation of the Dhātus. The function of the food in the body is to give enough energy to your physical body so that it will be transformed and it will produce the energy that will propel mental functions. So that is very crucial. So if the fire is too low, then there is loss of awareness. And then you lose your consciousness. If the fire is more, if it is more, then your body is burnt out. And then also, ultimately, you lose your awareness. So both very low fire or very high fire, both are detrimental to the preservation of our consciousness. So if Jadaragni works, and if also Bhutagni works, in both ways, your body is going to be destroyed. So you need an Agni which supports, which balances between these two, and that balancing Agni is called as Dhātu Agni. So please listen very carefully. This point may be a little bit confusing. Jadaragni removes the insulation. So food begins to burn by its Bhutagni. But if you allow the Bhutagni to work too much, then that substance is completely destroyed. That's what happens when we are dead. When we are dead, the Bhutagni works. It causes putrefaction of the human body. Our tissues cannot survive for long because the Bhutagni in our body is very active. So, how do we prevent the Bhutagni from destroying our body? We provide continuously new material, and the Dhatus have an Agni which completely rebuilds the body. Even as it is being destroyed, it is rebuilt from the food that we eat. So that is the function of Dhatu Agni. So if the Jadaragni is very low or if the Jadaragni is very high, if the Jadaragni is too low, then we cannot produce the nourishment for the Dhatus to replenish itself. So I will tell you the situation. Jadaragni too low. Then what happens is Dhatus do not get nourishment. So what will happen is Bhutagni will destroy Is this point clear? Because Dhatus have a very active Bhutagni. Unlike a stone. For example, if a piece of our flesh falls on the ground, separated from our body, you can see in a few hours it will begin to give a bad smell because the Bhutagni is breaking it down. The Bhutagni in our Dhatus do not need an external fire to be active. It is always active, a very strong Bhutagni. So what we need is that even as the Dhatus are burnt by its own Bhutagni, we need to supply fresh food from outside. So Jadaragni has to work on food to activate its Bhutagni. So when the Bhutagni in the food is activated, then it is able to provide nourishment to the Dhatus. So in the Dhatus, the Dhatu Agni ensures that even as the Dhatu is being burnt, new Dhatu is created. So when Jadaragni becomes too low, the Dhatus burn away and the person loses consciousness. Is this point clear? So if Jadaragni is very high, then also the rate of metabolism increases. The Bhutagni in the food becomes too active and it causes very quick breakdown and release of energy, and in this process the Dhatus get overburnt and so also they get destroyed. So in either cases, so there has to be a delicate balance between the Jadaragni, the Bhutagni, and then the Dhatu Agni. So these are the three stages, three types of Agni. So we have one Jadaragni, and we have, can you tell how many Bhutagnis are there? How many Bhutagnis are there? 5. Exactly. And how many Dhatu Agnis are there? 7. Yes. So we have 13 Agnis in all involved in digestion. So when there is a balance between Jadaragni, Bhutagni and Dhatu Agni, then our digestion is balanced and we are able to transform and maintain the body in a stable condition. So in Ayurvedic treatment, stabilizing Agni is a very important part of the treatment. Without stabilizing Agni, we cannot stabilize the health of the person. So liver, stomach and intestines play a big role in digestion. And the digestion proceeds in 3 phases. In the first phase, a lot of secretions are produced. This is called as the Kapha phase of digestion. In this phase, a lot of sweet taste dominates. So in this phase, the food becomes lubricated with a lot of moistening secretions. And this is the Kapha phase of digestion. And the second phase is called as the Pitta phase of digestion. And in this stage, the sour taste dominates. And this is the stage of activating the digestive enzymes. This is the stage when all the digestive juices are actually secreted into the food. In the first stage, we have the mucus secretions, saliva and other substances which are produced, which represent kapha. And once the food becomes moistened, then the body begins to produce the digestive enzymes which are said to be having a domination of sour taste. And then we have finally pungent taste domination. And this is the third phase of digestion. And this is the stage in which the waste is separated and nutrients are absorbed into the human body. So in the first phase, this is also the Vata phase of digestion. So these are the 3 phases of digestion. And we can have the Kapha phase represents the upper part of the alimentary tract. So diseases affecting this part of the alimentary tract usually show a predominance of Kapha. And the second part, the middle part of the alimentary tract is the Pitta phase. So these organs, diseases affecting these organs, so the liver, then the lower part of the stomach, and then the duodenum, the jejunum, a significant part of the small intestine. These are all representing the middle part of the alimentary tract. And the lower part of the alimentary tract represents Vata. So this is represented by the intestines, and diseases affecting this part of the intestine have a dominance of Vata, and we need to consider Vata when we treat this part of the alimentary tract. So this is in brief the discussion on the theory of digestion in the Ayurvedic texts. So do you have any questions here? Is everything clear? Okay, so if there are no questions, then we move forward. So we now look at the excretory system. So the theory of excretion, and we already discussed a little bit about this earlier, that we have the visible and invisible wastes. The food that we consume is processed into 3 parts. The gross part is removed as waste. The essence is used to repair and maintain the body. The subtle part goes to nourish the mind. The wastes are eliminated through feces, urine, and sweat. The body recycles a lot of waste, and only the excess waste is actually removed. So the theory of excretion has been elaborated in great detail in the classical Ayurvedic texts. And just this one point that I missed to mention in the theory of digestion is that the type of Vata that is responsible for the digestive function of the human body is Samana. So Samana Vata for digestion. And I hope you remember that for circulation, which Vata was responsible? So for circulation, Vyana Vata is responsible. And for respiration, which Vata is responsible? So for respiration, Prana Vata is responsible. And now we come to the theory of excretion. In the excretion, there's another Vata which is actually responsible for the smooth functioning of the excretory organs. And this is actually Prana Vata. So the classical Ayurvedic texts talk about the formation of urine, the formation of feces, the formation of sweat, and also describe the excretory organs, including kidneys, the urinary bladder, the ureters, and of course the external organs through which the excretion is achieved. And so it's interesting to see that Ayurveda has described and understood the basic physiological functions in such a way that we can use them also in specific diseases. So what is interesting here is that the theory of excretion talks about Apana Vata. Apana is the Vata. And these are the organs. So for treatment of all diseases related to the heart, we will need to work with Vyana Vata. That's the point that we take from these discussions. If we want to correct digestion, then we have to correct Samana Vata. And if we want to correct excretion, then we have to work with Apana Vata. So this is the clinical application of knowing these different types of Vata. So this is the understanding that Vata is that which controls everything else, including the three doshas, as well as the different organs and functions of the human body. And the principal understanding from this physiology is that if we learn how to identify the particular type of Vata that is underlying a particular pathology, then by targeting that Vata, then we correct everything else. So Vata is like that underlying key, the most important component that is involved in any pathology. And that Vata manifests in different ways. We shall shortly discuss about the different types of the tridoshas. And today we will be discussing about the different types of Vata. And these are very important in deciding and creating the focus for our clinical treatments. So is this part clear? Okay. So we move on to the most interesting and important part, which is this. Ojas is the end point of digestion and metabolism. And Ojas is actually the energy with which we execute not only our physical but also our mental functions. So you can say that Ojas is the currency of the human body. Okay. So if you have any specific questions to ask, I could try to clarify. But it's understandable that if you are not having an exposure to these concepts before, hearing them for the first time can probably not give you a complete insight into these ideas. There are also some Sanskrit terminologies to get familiar with, and also the logic may be a little bit different, but I hope that by going through these materials again, you will be able to clear up your doubts. But if you have any specific questions, you can even go ahead and ask now. So ojas is the end point of digestion and metabolism. So the body digests the food that we eat till it reaches a stage where it burns without producing waste. Is this clear? Now, although ojas is said to be produced specifically out of Shukra Dhātu, we say that ojas is actually essence of all the Dhātus. All the Dhātus actually, when they reach a stage of perfect digestion, of perfect transformation, it produces substances which help the body to produce energy and also to improve immunity. So the sum total of all these substances is called as ojas. Is this clear? So ojas actually is affected when you go through stress. So stress is the greatest enemy of ojas. So we can say that if your sympathetic nervous system is active, then ojas is lost. When parasympathetic nervous system is active, then ojas is gained. So when your body is relaxed, when your mind is relaxed, then your ojas increases. So one of the best methods of increasing ojas, can you say a non-medical, simple way of increasing ojas? Something which we do every day, but nowadays its quality is affected, and that is why there is an overall depletion of ojas in human beings. So can you tell a simple way of increasing ojas? No, you don't even have to go that far. The simplest way is sleep. Good sleep is like meditation for the body. So although it is not enough meditation for the mind, it is like meditation for the body. So one of the main reasons why we find people being affected with loss of ojas, the loss of sleep, loss of quality of sleep. So if we sleep well, if we relax well, then we can increase ojas. The more we are stressed, the more we lose the energy or ojas in the body. So Ayurveda says that our lifestyle, the purpose of our lifestyle is to ensure complete transformation of food, production of ojas, and also preservation of ojas. So is this part clear? So what we are actually doing is that is the unfortunate part of a bad health style. Is that we take all the effort, the dhatus take all the effort to burn and produce all the ojas, and in no time, due to our stressful lives, we completely destroy the ojas that we have built up so painfully, so with so much difficulty. So once we understand the importance of ojas, we will really realize the importance of healthy diet and lifestyle, and also mental practices like meditation. And the more ojas you have, the more robust your body becomes, the more resistant it becomes to diseases, the more powerful your mind becomes. So this is a brief overview of for one part of a discussion on the normal functions of human physiology, normal functioning of the human body. And these are important concepts that we will be using when we are discussing about diseases. And today we will open a new topic. In the next half hour or so, we will be discussing about doshas and its classification. So at this point, again, I would like to ask a question. Is whatever we discussed so far clear? Can we start the new topic? If there are any quick questions, then we can address them. Any questions? Can we go on to the next topic? Okay. Okay, great. So now we look at the next topic. We will not be able to complete this topic, but I hope we will go up to the classification of Vata dosha. And we are going to look at the doshas and its types. So how many of you are aware of the types of doshas? How many types of each dosha are there? Does anybody know? I'm just trying to make sure that how much explanation is needed. So, okay, if you feel there's a necessity for more detailed explanation, please let me know. I'm just going to give you an overview of the types of doshas. And there are actually, each dosha has 5 types. Each dosha has 5 subdivisions. So I have to give some Sanskrit terms. That is why I'm asking, has anybody heard of the 5 types of Vata? We already discussed a few of the types of Vata today. We discussed about Prana, about Vyana, about Samana, and also Apana. So the 5 divisions of Vata are Prana, Udana, Vyana, Samana, and Apana. So these are Prana Vata is the initiating impulse. It means the first impulse. So every movement in the human body happens because of prana. So we say prana is life itself. Nothing in the body can move without the initiation of prana. So it's called as the initiating impulse, the first impulse. And then we have udana, which is the upward impulse. The impulse which makes things move upward. And vyana is the spreading impulse. This is the actual meaning of these words. Prana, Udana, Vyana, Samana and Apana. And actually they are, in the strict sense, not sub-doshas of Vata. They are not actually separate. It actually represents one cycle of Vatic activity. They are just 5 phases of Vata expression. Is this clear? So when any movement happens in the human body, just like an ECG reading, at first there's the initiating resting impulse, as it is called, and then there's an upward movement, and then the impulse spreads, then there is a downward movement, and then the impulse dies. There's one cycle of activity. So the real sequence, this represents actually the physical location. The 5 prana, the vatas, you can identify them in different locations of the body. Prana is in the top region of the head. It is present up to the throat, and it also comes up to the navel sometimes, but it is in the upper region. The Udana comes next, it is in the chest region. So Udana is in the chest region. And then Vyana is in the heart, and Samana is in the abdomen, and Apana is in the lower abdominal region. So you can see this is a top-down description of Prana, Udana, Vyana, Samana and Apana. It's the same Vata, which when it is expressing as a cycle, it's divided into seemingly 5 different phases. And actually for any activity in the human body to happen, all these 5 vatas are actually involved. But in different regions, a certain type of vata may be dominant. That is why prana is said to be seated more in the brain, because the brain is the seat of all impulses, initiating impulses. The brain actually controls the rest of the body. So it sends the signals. So because all activities of the human body are initiated from the brain or controlled from the brain is said to be the seat of prana. Udana is that upward impulse, because it is from this region that your breath, the movement of the body moving upwards, that is dominantly happening in the Udana, which is also actually an extension of the pranic impulse from the brain. We know there is a center for respiration in the brain, and that it controls the expression of the respiratory processes. So we cannot say that Udana is present only in the chest or prana is present only in the head. All the 5 vatas are present in every tiny space of the human body. Wherever there is some action or activity, all the 5 vatas are there. So is this clear? Please do not consider the 5 vatas as separate. They are not separate. Is this clear? So then we have Vyana, which is the spreading impulse. And then we have Samana, which is harmonizing impulse. And Apana, which is the downward impulse, which means that the spreading impulse of spreading the blood all over the body, of circulating the blood all over the body. This activity happens mainly in the region of the heart, and that is why we say Vyana Vata is there. But that does not again mean that Vyana is present only in the heart. As I said, it's present everywhere, but the function of Vyana is more manifest in the region of the heart. And Samana is the harmonizing impulse for regulating the digestive fire, and this is down in the stomach region. And the downward impulse is something which dominates in the lower abdominal region, which is called as apana. So now I want to give you a simple example of how the 5 cycles happen. When you look at it functionally, the order of the 5 vatas is slightly different. First comes prana. So this is the structural alignment in the body where you can see these 5 vatas dominating. But when you look at it, their functional expression, the order is prana, samana, udana, vyana, and apana. Are you able to make this difference? I just want you to pay attention to what I have written in the slide is the structural location of the 5 vatas, and what I have written now in our discussion here is the functional expression. So please do a small exercise. You can take your pointing index finger and start rubbing it in the middle of your palm. Please rub your index finger in the middle of your palm for some time, and please tell me what happens. Did you try it? Heat. This is the thing, that prana is movement. Samana is continuous, harmonized movement. So what this says is that if you just make vata to move in a continuous, harmonized way, then heat is produced. So samana, the function of samana is to produce heat, to produce fire. So you can see when with your hand, if you make, so your first movement you can say is prana, the first movement of the, but if you rub in your hand in a random way without the continuous movement, then you will see heat is not produced. So sama means to harmonize, to regulate, to become regular. So when you rub your middle of your palm in a regular way, continuously, vigorously, then heat is produced. And this is the prana becoming samana. Heat is produced. And why is heat produced? Because that heat is produced to break down the fuel and release energy. So what happens when air is heated? When air is heated, it moves upwards. Is that not? Do you agree? So when prana becomes samana, heat is produced, and because of the heat, there is an upward movement, and that is called as udana. This is kind of explosive energy, the explosion of udana. So this is happening in every cell in the mitochondria when the cells make those movements, those impulses which generate the heat breaks down the fuel energy is released, and when that energy is released, it begins to spread. You can see when the hot air moves upward, and as it begins to lose its heat, it begins to spread everywhere. So the upward moving vata is called udana, and the spreading vata is called vyana. So you can see here movement, heat, upward, and spread. So this is the simple process that happens in nature around us. It's a principle of physics that movement, friction produces heat. Friction produces heat. Heat makes upward movement. And as heat is lost, there is spreading of the air. And finally, when the air becomes cold after this phase, it comes down. Cold air comes down. That is apana. Apana is the downward impulse. And apana vata is very cold. Vyana vata is warm. Udana is very hot. And prana is neither too hot nor cold. And samana is extremely hot. So you can see this is the cycle of the 5 vatas. So is this point clear? So you can see that the 5 vatas are active in cellular level. In each cell. Is this point clear? Okay. So this is about Vata and its types. We will look at each of these types of Vata in a short while. But today we are going to focus mainly on Vata and its types. But still I want to introduce the other types of doshas, the Pitta and its types. So we have 5 Pittas. They are the Vātakaphapitta, which is digestive, which is actually located in the stomach region, especially in the liver. Then we have Ranjakapitta, which colors the blood. It's in the liver specifically. Sadhakapitta, which enables mental functions to happen. It's in the brain and the heart region. Then Alochakapitta, which is in the eyes, helps in vision. And then Prajakapitta, which is in the skin, helps to improve the luster, complexion, and it has got many other functions. So we will look into a detailed explanation of the 5 Pittas we will do later in the next webinar. We will quickly now. So is this clear? I'm just simply listing the 5 types of Pittas. Vātakaphapitta, the Ranjakapitta, Sadhakapitta, the Alochakapitta, and Prajakapitta. And next we have Kapha and its types. Kledaka, Bodhaka, Sleshaka, Tarpaka, and Avalambaka. So you don't have to worry about these Sanskrit terms. They may not be very easy to pronounce. But Kledaka is that the kapha which predominantly helps in moisturizing various structures and components of the human body. This is called as the Kledaka kapha. And then we have the Bodhaka kapha, which helps in taste perception. And then Shleshaka, which helps in joint lubrication. And Tarpaka, which helps in nourishing sense organs. And Avalambaka, which is, supportive. So we will go into a more detailed description of kapha and its 5 types. But today I would like to complete a little more detailed overview of the 5 types of Vata. So this is just to introduce the doshas and its types. So we already discussed about 5 types of Vata, and I just mentioned by names the Kapha and Pitta and the subdivisions. So the description that I have given is not sufficient. I'll go into a more detailed explanation in our next webinar. But today let us look at the 5 Vatas in the next 10 minutes. So prana is the first of the 5 Vatas. And we say in Ayurveda that prana is life itself. When prana is damaged or affected, then no life is possible. Because prana is actually that life impulse. And so we say in Ayurveda, we say that what is the sign of death? Like when you are brain dead, then there's no way that you can be activated again. Because no more prana, the communication of prana. Prana is no longer able to activate the remaining functions of the body. And then we consider that the person is dead. So this prana is located between the navel region to the head. And their special places are navel, throat and nose, but its main seat is the head. So it is involved in breathing. We say prana initiates the process of breathing, although udana is involved in its maintenance of the breathing process. It's because of prana that we are able to swallow food, and all activities of the human body are initiated because of prana, and which is why it is called as the initiating impulse. So is this point clear? Next we have udana. So as I said, udana is the upward impulse, and it is located in the chest region. And it is udana which is representing the release of energy from food. So as you know, it is a function of the lungs. The lungs actually we say is like a bellows. In Ayurveda we say the lung functions like a bellow. So the bellows which we blow the fire. So we use the bellows to blow air into fire to make fire more stronger. So the lungs are like the bellows, because the lungs by its action causes the Dhātus to burn and release energy. So if samana digests food, udana helps Dhātus to burn and release energy. Is this clear? So energy, memory, luster, strength, speech, actions, all these things come because of the function. If udana is weak, then we become very weak in our body. We are unable to generate the energy that we need to burn. So we know that through respiration, oxygen is supplied to the cells. So cellular respiration. Is responsible for all the activities of the Dhātus in the body, and this is Dhātus, I'm sorry, it's a auto-correction that happened. So that is udana. So is this point clear? Are you able to understand the function of udana? So we say prana is life and udana is strength. A person dies if prana is affected, and a person loses his strength if udana is affected. Is that clear? So this is the difference between udana and prana. So next we go to vyana, which is the spreading impulse, It is located in the heart, and it's responsible for circulation. So we can say that in the heart there is this point called the sinoatrial node, and the it has its self-generating impulse. So this we can compare. So Vyana is that focus of stimulation, self-stimulation within the heart, which makes the heart to keep pumping. And this is a spreading impulse because it causes the blood to spread all over the body. So its main function is to circulate Rasa Dhātu, or the nutrient fluid. And then we have the samana, which is the harmonizing impulse located in the navel region, and it ignites the digestive fire. And the samana is actually the link between the brain and the gut. So we can say the samana represents. So in Ayurveda it is mentioned that prana connects to the samana in the region of the navel. So as we discussed earlier, functionally prana becomes samana. So prana is in the brain, in the head region, and when it comes to the navel region, then it gets linked with samana. And this is the Ayurvedic explanation, understanding of what is called as the gut-brain axis. So the activity of prana can influence the samana, and the activity of samana can also influence the prana. So that connection between the gut and the brain is described in Ayurveda through the connection between the prana and the samana vata. And then finally, we have apana. And apana is actually the downward impulse. It is located in the abdomen below the navel. It is responsible for excretory functions, childbirth, and all downward movements. So you can see the peristalsis is a function of apana. When apana is deranged, we have what is called as reverse peristalsis. The function of the kidneys, the downward impulses in the ureters, this is also the function of apana. The contraction of the urinary bladder, this is also the function of apana. The apana is also located in the sphincter of the rectal muscles. The sphincter of the rectum, and its contraction and relaxation are also functions of apana. So we can see here that apana is also apana which causes the uterine contractions. So when apana vata is affected, in fact, in the treatment of vata, if you want vata to be stabilized, if apana is affected, you get also problems in the head. You get headache, you get lack of focus and concentration. And Ayurveda says that if you can stabilize the movement of apana, if you can bring apana down, if you can soothe the functions of apana, then all the other vayus will become stable. So apana is in that way one of the vatas which can stabilize all other vatas. So when apana is functioning normally, all vatas also function normally. So that is the discussion for today's webinar. Today we have covered the especially classification of dosha, the Tridosha classification. We looked at some examples, tried to look at a few diseases to distinguish between normal dominance or dual and single dominance versus dual single dominances in Tridosha conditions. And then we went on to describe the seven Dhātus and how they transform under the influence of the various Agnis, and how Ojas is produced out of the Dhātus, how Dhātus are getting nourished, and in the process of this nourishment, we explain the theories of nutrition, the different methods, including transformations of one Dhātu to the other, which is very similar to the stem cell regeneration that we are talking about. We talked about active and passive transport, and then the process of circulation, of respiration, of digestion, and we looked at the different Malās, the waste that the body produces, both the visible and invisible, the recycled and the excreted, and also the functions of the various wastes, waste playing a very important role in physiological functions. So Ayurveda says that even through Panchakarma, please don't try to remove all the wastes of the body. We need to be very selective and only remove what is not wanted. And then we came to the doshas and looked at its sub-classifications. And we focused more on the Vata dosha, and I think we got a working understanding of how the 5 Vatas are expression of one and the same Vata in 5 phases. So with this, we come to the end of our webinar today. Do you have any questions? And there's one important announcement that I am very busy with a seminar and travel in the next 2 weeks. So we will not be, unfortunately, having a webinar again until, the week after the next. So to be exact, the date of the next webinar will be only on the 17th of August. So unfortunately, I am unable to avoid my engagements. We have a 7-day workshop, intense workshop called Amrita Sutram, and for which I'm engaged as the main course director throughout the whole day. And very late into the evening, and then immediately after that I have to make a trip, and so I'm unable to join for the webinar before that. So I appreciate your understanding, and we will meet again. And Yana will actually notify you of the date of the next webinar. So have a good evening or day, depending on where you are, and best wishes.